The process of making YouTube thumbnails for this channel has not been a secret. I've made multiple videos showing you how to make good, clickable thumbnails before, but I never really showed you how I do it, which is gonna be different from regular tutorials. Now, it's nothing too complex to understand, but some of the techniques I try to keep to myself because they would be a little too complicated to explain, or I would have to go and do basic Photoshop tutorials first. But today I decided I'm gonna show all of it. Make sure you watch until the end because the finishing touches is, in my opinion, what really sets my thumbnails apart. All right, a quick message from our sponsor, and then we can begin. Own has the biggest library of overlay packs for both Twitch streamers and YouTube streamers. Own basically provides you with everything you need to customize your channel. My favorite feature right now is the animated emote maker. You can use emotes that you already uploaded to Twitch. You can upload new emotes from your computer, or you can straight up make your own emotes from the website and use those to animate. And right now, you can get 50% off of all products if you log in into your own pro account. And simply logging in is completely free. I'll be sure to put a link in the description, but you can check it out over at owned.gg/gaellevel. That is own3d.gg/gaellevel. To immediately answer your question, yes, I use Adobe Photoshop in order to create my thumbnails. And before I even start, I think about a couple of graphic design principles for thumbnails. The most important, in my opinion, being contrast. You can call it hierarchy if you will, because it's not just about highlights and shadows or white versus black. It is also color contrast. For example, the values of the colors. Cyan or teal will jump out against a purple background. Yellow will pop out against a deep blue background. There's also contrast or hierarchy of objects in the scene. I usually pick two styles for those, where it's gonna be my face plus text, thumbnails without text, where it's gonna be my face and the subject. And then there's contrast or hierarchy of details. My background is full of a bunch of stuff that might be interesting when you're watching the video, but can be pretty cluttered when I'm making a thumbnail. So I could lower its exposure in order for me and the text to pop out more, but I can also blur it so that the viewer's attention can remain on me. And that's it. You just learned all the principles to making good YouTube thumbnails. Now, how do I take pictures for those thumbnails? At the end of recording my videos, I will actually strike a pose thinking about the thumbnail already, basically. Since we talked about the principle of my face plus text, I would scoot over a little bit just to leave enough space to have some text that is visible. If I'm gonna use two words, I'm gonna stand in the middle, like this. Just for example, since I'm recording right now, I'm gonna use the camera feature in Windows. Just type Windows key camera and you'll see it. And from there, I can actually set a timer and then take a picture. This is like a phone app. All right, once you're done, click on the camera roll here, just like you would do on your phone. You can right click and click on open folder. And as you can see, I have a whole bunch of them. And those are the pictures we took. All right, let's finally open up Photoshop. We're gonna go new file. We're gonna go 1080p. You don't have to, you can do 720 to make sure that your thumbnail at the end is gonna be less than 2 megabytes. But I like doing 1080p. From there, you're gonna pick your favorite picture. I think this one has a better expression, and I'm gonna drag and drop it. All right. From there, I'm gonna scale it up to actually frame it better, so I can have me as big as possible, and then also have a lot of empty space on the left here. So I'm gonna do this. There you go. So now my ratio is pretty good. My face is pretty visible, and I have over, this is 50%, I have over 50% to put my text. So I know that my text is gonna be very visible no matter what. Press enter, and this is nice. Now here's the part that is kind of complex that I don't really put in my other tutorials, is that I used to be a portrait photographer and I used to do a lot of retouching. So learning about that kind of stuff can actually help you a lot because it helps you treat an image that is a portrait, especially if you have to do with human faces. So the first thing I might actually want to do is treat this image. And I'm gonna do it non-destructively by adding a bunch of adjustment layers. I will not be modifying the pixels and the layers themselves because I always wanna go back and maybe tweak them a little bit. First one I like to do is do levels. That will give us a lot of contrast. That is pretty much contrast, dragging those handles here. And I wanna see how much I can get away with before my skin is completely saturated with highlights or shadows. For example, here, as you can see, when I say saturated or burnt, as people would call it, you can see this is pure white on my skin, and you don't really want that. You want to stay a little bit away until it's almost there. Nice. Doesn't matter about the glasses because they're not part of my skin, but nor the teeth really. And then I can bring down the darkness or the shadows, if you will, and that creates a good contrast. Basically, it's the ratio between highlights and shadows. It goes high up, but we don't want to lose too much detail, so we're gonna keep it here. If there's any like freckles or things like that that you want to get rid of, this is the good part. I don't usually do that, but I'm gonna turn off the levels. Actually, I'm gonna create a new layer And I can go in, if there are some things that bother you, you can remove them, but you don't have to. For example, I suffer from psoriasis and it's pretty bad right now. So there's little specks here on my scalp that I don't necessarily want. So here with the spot healing brush tool, I'm going to make sure I have simple all layers on, and I'm going to do this. So this is on a new layer. So this is why I call this non-destructive, because you can always bring back whatever it is you're doing. But again, this is not necessary to really zoom in, because no one is going to zoom in. Everyone's going to see it very tiny. It's going to be like that. So don't stress about it too much. Just showing you that option if you feel like there's something that might take the attention away from the actual thumbnail. But this is pretty good. Now, here's the thing. I talked about contrast. We affected all of this image. We don't necessarily want the highlights to be brighter in the background. So what we can do is click on that mask that comes with every adjustment layer, and we're going to press Ctrl-I, and that basically inverts the mask to black. We're going to press B to bring up the brush, and we're basically going to brush that effect back in with a white brush. Let's go back here, flip it to white, and boom, right? It's 100%, flow is 50%. And we can bring that in. And you can already see how much I'm popping out compared to the rest of the image, right? So we're gonna go slowly. So without even cutting myself out, I can achieve that kind of result, right? If you want, the whole close and all of that. But we can also cut myself out if I really want something that is clean and more versatile. And we will be doing that, but we're gonna do that for blurring the background. All right, I'm going to click on the layer of the image, and I'm going to go to my whatever quick selection tool, or you press W, quick selection tool, or you can press W. I believe if you also have the magic wand tool, you can just click select subject, and Adobe will do its best to figure out what's the main subject in there. It's going to create a selection. And as you can see, there's a selection around me, but it's not perfect, but it's also not too bad for what we want. We're going to duplicate the image. I'm going to hold Alt on my keyboard and drag down. Boom, it created a copy. And then on the top one, I'm going to create a mask. By clicking bottom here, add layer mask. Boom. And you don't see the difference because it's basically the same layer. But if I remove the background, this is what it looks like. Not great, not at all. But if I actually start blurring the background, I'm going to go to blur. The best thing you want to do is add lens blur. But in this case, since we're going to make the background dark, Gaussian blur is not bad either. You don't want to add too much. We're going to keep it up. Maybe something like that already brings a lot of attention just on you, your face here, right? Now you can go ahead and clean up that mask a little bit with a white brush or a black brush to hide white reveals. Gonna go black brush, gonna make that smaller, right click and stuff. And, or actually I'm gonna do the opposite. Wait, so I'm adding the blur with the black brush, and I can press X to switch it up to go back to my white. It's basically foreground color, white, background color, black. Honestly, I'm pretty satisfied with this. It's not too bad. I'm going to Control minus to go back. I know that I have a bunch of specs on my t-shirt, but we're gonna deal with that a little bit later. So far, so good. We have all of that just for the face. There are other techniques that I sometimes use, but we're not gonna go over that today. So in order to make me pop out of the background even more, I'm gonna click on the background, and I'm gonna add a curves adjustment layer on top of the background. So in between the layer of me and that blurry background. So adjustment layer, curves adjustment. You can also add an exposure one, but I like the curves one because it kind of preserves the complete darkness, and it also kind of preserves the highlights a little bit so that they're still visible. And depending on the elements that I have, I'll bring this, further down or not. I think this is not bad, but as you can see, our selection, since it's completely different from it, is really standing out. So we can go back on that mask, on that selection. I hold Alt to click on it to see what it looks like. And I can still go ahead with my brush and do the same things as before. I can click with a white brush, and here it's going to be not super precise, but it's going to smooth it out a little bit at least. I like to go from within first, and then we're going to go back. I'm just clicking a whole bunch until it looks semi-natural, and then I'm going to switch it up, press X to go with black now, bigger brush, and I'm going to lower the opacity so we can have more control. But now when I click, it actually affects it less, but I'm going to go slowly back in. So basically those highlights to dim them down a little bit, as if my hair was actually being affected by the background. Just watch out for the skin here. You don't want it to be touching it too much. And as you can see, it's blending in pretty well. Now you can spend hours on this if you want, but it's just a thumbnail. It's going to be small. People are not going to necessarily pay attention. And there you go. All right. The cool thing also here is that since we separated ourselves from the background, we can also add stuff behind us, but this is not necessarily the thing that we want to highlight right now. Now it's time to actually start putting text. I'll click on the text tool here or press T on my keyboard. I'll click once and I use this font called Montserrat. And I know that the word that I want this thumbnail to emphasize on is the word thumbnail, ironically. So I'm going to kind of bring it in. I'm going to use my characters options. If you don't see them, you go to Windows, character. And then here, I know that the tracking is too much because, well, the word is too long and I still want it to be that size. So put it to 0, press enter. And even though this is my go-to font right now, I actually want something that is more compressed so that it's still visible within that space. Basically, I can make this fit, Control T to transform, but this is too small in my opinion. Since the thumbnail is going to be small, this could work, but to me, I don't like it. The word thumbnail needs to be big and very visible. So I'm going to find a font that is more compressed. Or I can always, bring down the tracking, but we're at the point where it's not going to be that readable. I know that there's a font called Big Noodle Titling. Bring the tracking back to 0. And this one is more compressed, as you can see. Control T. And if I bring this up, now we're getting the same word, but more compressed and bigger. I'll probably have some words on top of it, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit and try to visualize where it would be. And maybe I wanted to say YouTube thumbnails. All right. From here, I'm going to go click on the move tool to basically select out of the text tool, go back to the text tool so I can click and add another text. And this is basically where you're going to find the surrounding words. How to nail your YouTube thumbnails. That wouldn't work. Ultimate guide to the perfect thumbnails or thumbnail. How to make YouTube thumbnails. Or maybe I want something that would say make better thumbnails. Nice. In this case, what I actually want to do is go back to my other font, see if that would work if I mix and match them. Since this font is wider, the hierarchy will bring, the idea of hierarchy will bring the viewer's eyes to the word thumbnails first. We can even bump up the tracking even more to make sure that it's the case. I'm not really happy with it, so let me brainstorm real quick how I can make it better. Okay, not too bad, but very, very wordy. Definitely not going to be my best work, but still. From there, what you can do is actually stylize the text a little bit if it's not popping out as much. In my case, my background is low exposure because we dealt with that. So of course, white on whatever it is going to be very visible. But you can always add drop shadows and bevel and emboss and all that kind of stuff. One thing that I want is for the word thumbnails to really, really stand out. In our case, we have bluish, purplish. So cyan or whatever light blue we have here would work, but we already have the light blue in the background. So it wouldn't necessarily stand out that much and it would blend in a little too much with the background. So one of the colors I've been adding in my thumbnails is yellow, because yellow really stands out against my color scheme. So I want to follow my color scheme, but sometimes it's good to recognize that, oh, maybe your color scheme doesn't have colors that pop out that much, that really jumps to the viewer. So yellow is a really, really good one that I love using, and it gives us that look. Now we still want it to be kind of separated from the background, so I'm going to add a drop shadow. I want the blending mode to be linear burn because it's the most like dramatic one, as you can see, and it also switches the color. It doesn't just add black, it basically burns the color underneath it. Spread, I want that to be low. And you want to kind of respect the lighting in the picture. For example, my light is clearly coming from the top left of the screen here. So we're going to do the same thing. Right? And then you can lower the opacity until you feel like it's enough. And you can play with the distance also. By the way, this is supposed to be behind me, right? Don't worry too much about this part. It's supposed to look like that, basically. Now we can copy the same drop shadow that we have over the word thumbnails to put it up there by hovering over the effects right next to the layer, holding Alt, clicking, dragging, and dropping it. Boom. And as you can see, it makes the text really stand out way more, even though it's already white. In my case, I like keeping it simple like that for my videos. But if you really, really, really want to do something to make sure that it's super duper visible, you can just create a shape behind it in a way. I'm just doing it quick to show you so that, yeah, if you had like a black shape like that, it would be very, very, very visible, basically. I do this from time to time, but it can give like a kind of generic YouTube tutorial look, because a lot of people use it. So just keep that in mind. All right, I'm probably going to play with the text some more because I'm still not totally satisfied, not going to lie. Character for this one, I might bring it down. That's the tracking that I'm bringing down. And then I really love to zoom out, see, hey, is that visible or not? Also, saving is very important. For example, right now, for some reason, it's not letting me save. There you go. All right, so I'll play with it a little more. All right, that's not bad. So we can get on to the finishing touches. For example, on top of my cutoff layer, I can zoom in and add a little bit of shadows. I'm gonna click on that said layer right there. I'm gonna click new layer. Actually, it should be underneath it. Sorry. Zoom in, and with a brush tool, press B, bring that down. Make sure your opacity is kind of low. And we're gonna switch the blending mode already to something like linear burn, because it's gonna burn the colors properly instead of just adding whatever color you're gonna pick. Make sure that your color here is set to black and white so that you're drawing with black basically. Now you can begin to draw. Realistically, this is not a color, like this is desaturating it. It wouldn't work like that, so maybe we need to go with overlay, I guess. Nice. And it would bring it more towards orange-ish. Or, you know, if you really care about it, what you can do is just pick an orange-ish color. So let me start over again. Click on the foreground color, pick this, and go more orange. And of course, we want something like that. Still pretty saturated. There you go. Just draw over it. Don't worry because it's going past it. We're going to add a clipping mask to make sure that it stays in there. Nice. Don't go too much on this one because like it's just your skin. It shouldn't be producing that much according to the lighting in the scene. So what we want is to actually go ahead and put this on top of the word. There's a curves adjustment here that's affecting it, but that's not a problem. We're going to hold Alt in between those two layers just to clip it to it. And now you can see it's not going over. And now we can just lower the opacity as much as we want. We could even add a little blur effect to make sure that it blurs out perfectly like that. This little detail, it doesn't affect it that much. All right, so that's one detail. We're actually going to add even more details to the cutout part here. And for this one, what I want to do is duplicate it. So hold Alt, click, drag. I'm going to click on the picture itself. I'm going to go to filters and I'm going to sharpen it because as you can see, it's not the best quality when you're taking pictures with the camera app in Windows. We can boost that and click OK. And I'm actually going to double mask this. And the way I do this is putting it in a group, Control G, put in a group and then put a mask in that group, Control I to reverse the mask. And now we can paint in where we want details. Now, usually you don't want details on your forehead. You want them around the eyes, the mouth, and a little bit of facial hair too. So make sure that you're painting with white reveals, black hides. You can put this 100% if you want to. You're comfortable with it. And as you can see, this is very exaggerated, but it'll work. It adds even more details to your face and gets people to focus in even more. Okay, that's all nice, but I'm still not satisfied with everything. I'm going to select everything and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to zoom into my face, but at the same time, I want to also copy the text so that the word thumbnail will be really, really visible. I usually try to not go for words that have that many letters just for that issue. But if I do this, now there's more and more focus on my face and also the word thumbnail because it's getting bigger on the frame. I was taking way past 65%, 70% horizontally on the frame. Press enter. And I think that's pretty nice. Okay, so items for decoration, quote unquote, this is like the finishing touches. One thing that I like to do is add little shapes. For example, I'm going to add this rectangle. I'm going to make sure that it's the same yellow here. And depending on your branding, you can choose whatever type of color you want. And I'm going to bring it down. Or maybe I want this flipped. In that case, I can Control T. Horizontal, and let's say that I want it like that. I want it that way. Tell me why. And I can duplicate this by holding Alt on my keyboard, clicking and dragging with the move tool. And there you go. And that simultaneously also gets rid of all the empty space that I have up there. That being said, though, I should probably just go ahead and bump this up a bit more to fill that space. Control T and make it bigger. Now it's properly visible. Go to characters and bump up the heading. Just like that. Not bad. Okay, more for finishing touches. I like to go and find lens flare images and add them. So from Google Image, you find some lens flares. Make sure you're not infringing on anyone's copyright. And I can go all the way up top if I want to, or just behind those two bars. Control V and add a lens flare. We're going to set the blending mode to add. And from there, I can decide where to put it. It gives you this extra cinematic look. Maybe I'll put it underneath those two things. There you go. And of course, you can also size it. Don't do too much with it. For example, this one, I'm going to just duplicate, Control T, and we're going to make that really, really small, right? And that way I can even use it for the text. Make the text look even cooler. Nice. We're going Michael Bay. We're going J.J. Abrams. Right now, there might be a little too much yellow. So what I can do is add the mask of me being cut out on top of the bottom one. So there's multiple ways of doing this. You could probably go ahead and just drag this underneath it. For example, I guess that works actually. Let's just keep it that way. What would happen if I drag the top one? Surprisingly, that also works. Okay, pretty cool. Just, tone down a little bit of the yellow. I'm going to click on the top layer and I'm going to press Control A. It's going to select everything. I'm going to press Control Shift C. It's going to copy everything that's visible within that selection. And I'm going to press Control V. It's going to paste everything. So now I have an image that is just this full image baked in together. What I'm going to do is go to Filters and I'm going to go to Blur and Gaussian Blur. And I want to create highlights with this, basically like some sort of glow. So we want it to be still visible, but not too blurry. Like that. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to set this to whatever lighting mode that I feel is more appropriate. You see how Lighten is creating this screen. Screen is creating a full glow. So maybe we don't want that. Dodge is a little too much. Add is like the highest. Lighter color is actually pretty decent. So between Lighten and lighter color, you can decide. Keep in mind that Lighten would actually create white, more of a light color for the glow, whereas lighter color would keep that glow. For example, the yellow stays yellow. We're going to go with lighter color. I'm going to create a mask for that. Control I on the mask. And then basically I'm going to go in and add some manual glow. For example, I know that the A is supposed to be very, very bright because it has straight up lens flare. I'm going to go ahead and click on there. My opacity is 100%. My flow is at 50. We can lower that a little bit, but if you want to move fast, it's still better. So you'll see some glow on some of my thumbnails. And a lot of people have been asking me, how do you do the glow? That's what I do. Also keep in mind, if this is, for example, something you want to replicate, all of this is possible with Photopea, for example, which is free. So if you don't have Photoshop, it's not an excuse to not be able to do any of this. You can also add some of the glow to your face if you want to. So it's just a nice little touch. I think that really makes the thumbnail pop out a bit more. And if we're talking about the real finishing touch that I like to do, that I started doing recently, it's kind of cheating. But what I started to do is actually add a zoom effect to the background. So we have our background right here. I'm actually going to duplicate it just in case I mess it up. And I'm going to go to Filters. I'm going to go to Blur. I'm going to find Radial Blur. I'm going to make sure I click on Zoom. I'm going to keep it at 10. You're going to see the effect the background has. Now, here you can actually pick where you want it to be. In my case, I know that I am on the right side, so that it should probably be a bit to the right, not too much. This effect is very dramatic. So let's click OK and see what it does. And it basically creates that zoom effect, that motion kind of thing. But right now it's not that visible. It definitely helps obscure the background a little bit. So I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to Control A, Control Shift C, Control V to paste the full image. Now I'm going to add it to the whole image. So radial blur, zoom 10, and I'm actually going to bring it back to the middle a little bit. And I'm going to click OK. Now you're really going to see the effect. You see that? From there, what I'm going to do is create a mask. Of course, I'm going to Control I, and then I'm going to go back and actually add it back in with a brush. Opacity 74%, maybe that's too much, 50%. And we want a big brush, and let's do that. So it's very subtle, but some people have been telling me that, I don't know, there's an effect that really drags their look to the middle or to whatever I'm trying to show. For example, we don't really want it on the text, but just a little bit, just a little bit. It definitely helps carry away the eyes from the outside of the image towards the center, which is where our text is. You can make it as subtle as you want or as harsh as you want. Don't make it too harsh though, because it kind of hurts the eye. And there you go, not bad. What I'm going to do is actually go add some more Gaussian blur to the background. So I can just double click on Gaussian blur here since it's a smart filter, because it's a smart object. If your image is rasterized, it's just a JPEG or a PNG, yeah, just go and add filter and then add more blur. And basically I can affect the background. I like going drastic first and then dialing it down to see what I can get away with. And there you go. And if I really want to make it extra, for it to have like that extra thing, usually the eyes are cool, but having glasses gives us an opportunity to create little special effects, for example. In this case, I think I could probably use the circle selection tool. See if that would work. To basically go in close enough. I'm going to use the paint bucket tool here. I created a new layer, by the way. So just fill this in as much as I can. Circle select tool again, paint bucket tool again. Nice. Control D to deselect, by the way. And you can just do it again. Control D to deselect. Here, I'm going to duplicate it just in case I mess up. Pick the top one and I'm going to add a Gaussian blur. A good secret for thumbnails is knowing when it's too much. This is definitely too much, but I think it's a great representation of the time that I actually spend on my thumbnails and how I make it pop as much as I can. Always be watching it from afar, being like, okay, this is how people are going to see it, or like this. You're never actually going to see it this big on their screen. So if it's readable, there's something to catch the eyes, the glasses. The most important word is the biggest, and it's a color that makes it pop. There's good color contrast. The background is blurry and darker than the rest. We can probably also add some sort of vignettes to the background, also to bring the attention towards the words and the face. Get a new layer underneath the yellow lines. Brush, black, huge, low opacity, and just start painting in a little bit. I also like bringing the attention to one spot where the light would be coming from. Now you can see it's on top of my word here, but we're gonna move it a little bit. In this case, we're putting emphasis on thumbnails, but we know that there's a light source here. Let me drag this down underneath the word thumbnail. Boom, not bad. Lower the opacity because it's very intense. Before, after, and I think we have ourselves a good thumbnail. So in case you were wondering, yes, sometimes I spend more time making a thumbnail than I actually do making the video, the whole video. Is it necessary? No, not at all. As long as you apply the principles of hierarchy and contrast, you should be fine. But if you want to spend more time to customize it to make it more your own, at least some of your viewers will appreciate it. In case you're not aware, I've been streaming on Twitch, and sometimes I do some of those Photoshop projects live, so you can come in, ask questions, and even win some stuff for free. So make sure you check me out on Twitch. I have a whole playlist about Photoshop stuff that has to do with content creation, both with Photoshop and also Photopea, which is free. It's Photoshop, but free. It's the same thing. If you learn Photoshop, you learn Photopea. If you learn Photopea, you learn Photoshop. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Go out there, make me proud, get level, out.